Thank you for joining us today in this joint webinar from the California Community Colleges and the RP Group to go over and look at some of the trends in the 2023 California Community College Attendance Survey. I'm joined by my colleagues, Allison Beer, Alyssa Nguyen, and Michelle White. So we'll go ahead and transition in and get started.
So our agenda for today will include a summary of the purpose, design, and methodology used in the survey. We'll take a look at the types of questions we asked, the timing of the survey, as well as the responses we received. We'll look at some of the respondent characteristics from the survey sample and how they compare to statewide figures. And then we're going to get into selected snapshots of the data. So we're going to look at things like course modality preference, attendance factors, and affordability factors. The last part of the agenda is really going to focus on how colleges can make the data more actionable. So we'll look at some recommendations on how to assist students, as well as ideas for using the survey data at the local level. And then we'll just take a few minutes to wrap up and answer any remaining Q&A questions. Okay. So in terms of the overarching purpose of the survey, we were really looking into understanding the factors that influence students' decisions to enroll. So this was looking at both new and prospective students, as well as students who were previously enrolled in the system as of fall 2023. In terms of the design and methodology, so this provides a cross-sectional snapshot of survey data as of fall 2023. And this was done in partnership with the Chancellor's Office, RP staff, and then we also invited a UC Davis professor from the School of Education, who is a professor and researcher, and she helped provide additional insights and assisting us in making the survey items very student-friendly. In terms of the survey instrument, we included a combination of fixed choice and open-ended items to better understand what factors were influencing students' decisions to attend college in fall 2023. And the open-ended data really helped us kind of dig deeper and helped individual colleges dig deeper into some of the findings we were seeing in the kind of traditional quantitative data. By and large, the questions focused on challenges and factors affecting students' decisions to enroll in fall 2023, but it also included items on students' prior college experiences and their perceived value of education. In terms of survey distribution, the survey launched at the end of August. It opened August 29th and closed October 17th. It was open for just under 2 months, so some colleges may have actually opened the survey a little bit later. We kind of left it at the discretion of the colleges to determine when and how that survey link would be distributed to their students. Initially, we had close to 39,000 raw responses. We did some data cleanup to eliminate any empty cases and duplicates. After our data cleanup process, we ended up with 29,463 unique responses. And that spanned 116 credit colleges and 2 colleges of continuing education. We were really happy to see that all regions across the state were represented. North Bar North had the fewest number of participants, and then, perhaps unsurprising, LA and Orange County had the largest representation. We want to share just some of the respondent characteristics in the sample profile. So one of the questions we asked was students' attendance status, and this helped us kind of look at students from those who were previously enrolled versus students who were new or prospective. And what we see is that almost 3/4, so 71% of students who participated in the survey were previously enrolled students, and just under 1/3, 29%, were new prospective to this system. Compared to what we're seeing statewide figures, what you'll see is that there was a slightly larger proportion of African-American Black students and a slightly larger proportion of Asian Filipino students. And then counter to that, kind of a slightly smaller proportion of Hispanic and white students. When we looked at gender and age, almost 2/3 of the survey sample was comprised of students who identify as female. And as you can see, based on the statewide figures, which is based off of the most current statewide numbers, we typically see a larger proportion of female students anyway. And so that was just sort of amplified in the statewide survey, which is also pretty typical in our survey respondent profile to see a larger number of female respondents. When we look at age, here you can see about 43% of the survey sample were under the age of 25, whereas statewide, we see approximately 60% of our student population under 25. So in the survey sample, we did see more adult learners. We looked at different special populations, and almost half of the survey respondents said that they were first generation, so 48% are the first person in their family to attend college. We also learned that about 20% of the sample said that they had dependents who received 50% or more of their support from them. And then 22% said that they had some type of disability. And so when we actually look at that statewide number, which is not here, but we did do that comparison, that's closer to 5%. And so we did see a larger proportion of students in our survey sample who reported having a disability. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Alyssa, who's going to get into some of the selected survey data.
Thank you, Michelle. So one of the new items that we added to the 2023 administration of the college attendance survey was one around course modality preferences, because of the growing sort of interest and need that colleges had around understanding what their students' learning preferences were. So in this new item, what we found was that there seemed to be a general preference for in-person courses by both prospective and previously enrolled students. But there also seems to be some interest, more so among the previously enrolled students, for online learning classes. So what we're finding here is that there seems to be a sort of some mixed findings around what students' learning preferences are, and that it's likely the case that their preferences boil down to what is going to work with their respective schedules. Next slide, please. So in terms of students' fall 2023 plans, what we find is that 8 out of every 10 students surveyed shared that they were planning to or have already enrolled for classes in the fall of 2023, with a handful of students, both prospective as well as previously enrolled students, who were thinking about enrollment, they were still deciding, or and then a very small percentage, 4% and 6% respectively, not planning to enroll for fall 2023. Next slide, please. So when we zoom into the students who have not enrolled for fall 2023, we provided a list of potential reasons influencing or affecting students' decisions to attend or re-enroll at the college, and found that the top reason for both prospective and previously enrolled respondents was related to concerns about balancing multiple and competing demands at the same time. So what you'll see here is that nearly a third of the respondents from each of the groups marked that, and that was the highest proportion and the largest factor driving students' decision to attend or re-enroll, with also college affordability concerns rising to the top for both groups, prospective and previously enrolled students, about 2 out of 10 students marking that as an indicator. So the college affordability concerns, as well as the juggling of multiple responsibilities, is highlighted by a quote or comments that one student shared. So this one student shared, "The main factor is juggling schoolwork with my job. Things have been super difficult and hard lately. When I seem to focus too much at school, I end up with and behind on my bills and responsibilities outside of school." And so this is really pointing to students' sort of ongoing and increasing demands to try to balance everything they have going on top of trying to attend school, which is likely impacting sort of their confidence that they can actually sort of balance all of that. Next slide. So we had a question that we added in the survey to try to understand what factors may be driving students' ability to continue their studies. And so in a question that we asked, we found that 14% of previously enrolled students had dropped or withdrew from at least one of their classes in the prior term. And when we asked them what impacted whether or not they were planning to drop or withdraw, or if they actually dropped or withdraw, what we found was that 35% indicated that they needed to prioritize their mental health. Another third indicated that they needed to prioritize work. And then about a third of respondents marked not being able to keep up with the pace of classes. So similar to the question that was previously shared in terms of the list of possible reasons, students were provided a list of multiple options, and they were able to select as many of the options that were relevant to the question that they were being asked here. So these findings really reflect, again, the growing demand students have to juggle all that they have going on in their personal, work, and school lives, and how all of that is impacting their mental and psychological well-being. So as one student shared in the open-ended comments, my mental health was declining rapidly, and I couldn't keep up with my classes anymore, so I dropped one of them. Next slide, please. So as students are sort of navigating and juggling multiple responsibilities, we thought it would be important to also sort of dig into perhaps what might be influencing students' decision to attend or re-enroll by asking them a question around the importance of a college education at this time. So this figure here provides some information that intersects students' fall 2023 plans alongside the question that we asked to tap into their perceived value of education, asking it in terms of an importance rating scale. So here we can see some pretty clear patterns in terms of if we look at the figure all the way to the right under do not plan to enroll, we can see that students' perceived value of education does appear to be related to whether or not students decide to re-enroll or attend, seeing that a much greater proportion in the pattern of the relationship between the value of education and not planning to attend is in a pattern or direction that is opposite from the other ones, whereby we're seeing a greater proportion of students who feel like the value of education is not important at all relative to the other ratings. So you'll see there it's 19% and goes in the other direction compared to the other fall 2023 plans. Next slide, please. So as we saw earlier, about 20% of students, both from that are prospective and previously enrolled students, indicated that college affordability and the lack of or it being unaffordable was one of the reasons influencing their decision to attend college. So in this year's survey, we added some additional questions to dig deeper into trying to understand and unpack what is making college unaffordable for students. So among students who indicated they couldn't afford college at the time, and that is there were over 1,000 students who indicated so, the following survey items that we'll be sharing tap into the reasons that they feel college is unaffordable, and then the following slide will share some information about how they plan or previously had paid for their education. So in this slide, we see that of all of the types of possible costs associated with an education, most students marked college fees. And in fact, over 80% of all respondents indicated so, followed by books and related materials, as we can see in this visualization here. So cost concern types were pretty similar between new and prospective students and previously enrolled students, with some notable differences between specific types of supply costs between the groups, with a larger proportion of new and prospective students marking laptop and computer costs than previously enrolled students. Next slide, please. So when we asked how students were planning to or have paid for college, the top source selected was their own money overall. So you'll see here that 65% of previously enrolled students indicated that they had paid for their education with their own money, and a little less than half of new and prospective students were planning to pay for their education using their own money. A greater proportion of previously enrolled students marked promise and federal aid as a source than new and prospective students, but a greater proportion of new and prospective students than previously enrolled marked Cal Grant as a source that they were planning to tap into to pay for their education. Next slide, please. So in the survey, we also asked students, what are some of the ways that the college can support students? So nearly half of the students indicated that the ways colleges can support their attendance is to provide financial support. We see here that nearly 50% of new and prospective students indicated so, with 40% of previously enrolled students indicating so. And then open-ended follow-up questions about how the college could help make college more affordable for students. Many of the students emphasized the need for more financial aid, as we're seeing in the slide here, specifically grants and scholarships. But many students also express uncertainty about the available financial resources and suggested that the college could provide more guidance around what are all of the financial aid options available to students, as well as scholarship opportunities and general information about the application process overall. There was a recurring sort of theme in the open-ended comments in terms of a call for more increased financial aid availability and a more simple application process, calling to the possibility that perhaps students are experiencing administrative barriers to the financial aid resources available by their institution. Next slide, please.
All right, so one of the things that made this survey actionable is that students had the option to share their contact information. So colleges could do outreach to students directly and offer assistance in terms of answering questions about enrolling in classes. So 11,708 students elected to share their contact information, which amounted to about 40% of our total sample. And those contact lists were shared with colleges as part of the unitary data that we distributed individually with each college. So this was a statewide survey, and the report we're going to share on the findings are going to be aggregated to capture kind of overarching themes at the statewide level. But one of the advantages in collecting that contact information and being able to disaggregate by college is that the data becomes much more actionable and specific to our institutions. So findings from your local analyses are applicable, to your student populations. When colleges are evaluating their local survey data, it can be helpful to create a list with specific leads based on what students are saying they need. And different questions in the survey kind of point to different resources that students are saying they may need. So colleges can better identify which students need support around things like basic needs, financial aid resources and funding opportunities, mental health resources, and areas that involve like registration support, helping them through that onboarding and outreach process. So I'm going to walk through a couple of examples of how student contact lists can be parsed out by key questions in the survey. One of the questions we asked students was, what is making college unaffordable for you? So we already saw kind of the data on that question statewide. If students at your individual colleges are saying, college fees are really a barrier for me, then those students might be connected to financial aid resources at your institutions, work study opportunities, scholarships, paid internships, things of that nature. If your students are saying books and course materials are a challenge, pointing them to open educational resources, your ZTC initiatives, helping them find other resources on campus. For instance, many libraries on campuses will offer sets of textbooks to students that they can check out. And then even book vouchers through EOPS. So kind of helping students find the resources they need based on what they're saying in the survey data. Other students might say, you know, technology and things like getting a laptop or a computer in order to complete classwork or take online classes is a challenge. So helping them connect to things like loaner laptops, hotspots your college might offer, areas where there's free Wi-Fi, things like that. Food is also, you know, we saw an issue for many students and other basic needs that they're struggling to address. So helping them find basic needs resources, helping them find if you have a food pantry on campus, food drives, community resources, such as food banks can be helpful. So this is all about kind of parsing out the individual student needs that your colleges are seeing in your data and connecting them to the right resources. So it's not just broad strokes, it's really individualized, targeted outreach. When we asked students, how are you planning to pay for your education? We saw that a large majority were saying that they're paying out of pocket. And so how can we help those students connect to funding resources that are available at your institutions? One thing that your college can do is actually check to see if of the students who said they're applying for or paying for college out of pocket, did they apply for FAFSA? Do they qualify for Promise? And then doing some, you know, direct follow-up with those specific students to help them get through that process. What we were seeing in the statewide data is that there were different factors affecting students' kind of access or knowledge of financial aid and resources. So in some cases, students might just need help learning what resources are out there, and then other students need more targeted help around getting through that financial aid process. College retention efforts. So another area that institutions can kind of use these lists is to do intentional and targeted outreach and follow up. The survey parsed out by these different kind of areas can be distributed to constituencies on campus. So it's not just how can we connect directly with students based on what we're seeing in the survey data, but how can the data be shared more broadly at your institutions across constituencies that can actually do something around decision and planning with this data. So with any research, we don't want to keep this information kind of in a bubble. So when we look at the survey data, you know, asking who can this information go to? One of the questions we asked in the survey was, what can the college do to help you stay enrolled or attend? And so getting the information to the right people is going to be kind of how we help students indirectly rather than doing the direct outreach. We can help students kind of at the institutional level as well. So for students that are saying, you know, I need financial support, it makes sense to send that list of students to financial aid, right? To be able to kind of do some of that outreach, or even just think about what are students saying at that college level that they need help with? Is it a lack of awareness? Is it help getting through the paperwork that's required for financial aid? So really drilling down into those survey responses. When we look at that question around course modality preference, this is going to probably be information that's helpful to a VPI or Office of Instruction. If we see that students are saying, you know, they really need greater flexibility and leniency from professors, that's something you want to share with your faculty. And then, you know, if you have student success teams or learning communities, many students were saying that they want more personal and caring communication, more timely and responsive communication. So that's something that like student support services might be able to make use of. Okay, I think we actually have a poll for everyone that's in the webinar. So we wanted to know a little bit from your perspective, how have you been able to use the college attendance survey? So we're going to launch that poll and then we're going to share the results momentarily. The most common response was, I'm not sure. So that's helpful for us to know, because that was really the intent of this webinar today, was to kind of connect our colleges with different ideas and suggestions on how they might make use of the survey data to make it actionable and actually do some of that targeted outreach and connecting students to different interventions. Others said that we have not used it yet. So perhaps after attending today, you'll have some food for thought in how you might be able to use your individual college level data. And then it looks like the next one was, we did not participate in the survey. So that makes sense. So you might be able to take a look at some of the statewide figures and kind of see broadly what's happening in terms of factors affecting students' decision to attend or re-enroll. And then it looks like the other two, the smallest, were shared the student contact list to key colleagues and presented college survey results. So those are two kind of ideas on how the data can be used, and we're going to get into that in just a second. But hopefully after this, you'll be able to have some other ideas for how you might be able to make use of this information. So we already talked about kind of looking at those specific survey items to help provide leads on how to connect students to different supports. And the data are disaggregated. We provided technical tables in the report, which will be shared broadly in the next RP super brief. But those technical tables include different levels of disaggregation to help really key in on differences and specifically at your college level, where you might see, more students who are new or prospective need this versus students who are previously enrolled are saying something else and might need different levels of support. And so being able to use those specific survey items and connecting students to the supports that they say they need is one way that the survey data can be used. The other way is simply taking this slide deck, which we're going to be sharing as well, and updating it with your local survey data, and then doing some facilitated discussion around the findings. And so this slide deck will include the statewide figures, but being able to show comparatively what your local survey data looks like, and then having those discussions and doing some planning and decision making around the data. And lastly, you can take the survey results and share it with committees and departments to help inform their strategic enrollment management effort. So all of this is really focused on enrollment management, but we also saw areas that kind of emphasize the importance of financial aid and doing outreach and recruitment to help students through that onboarding process. And so just getting the information to the right constituencies. So we did want to just remind folks that we've previously shared the unitary data for your college, as well as an aggregate report, which kind of summarizes what your local college data was. And so you can see it kind of both ways. And then this report that we put together, which you will have access to, and the webinar recording, as well as the PowerPoint slides, will all be shared in the next RP group super brief. And we're also going to be posting those items on our webpage. So stay tuned for that. I think we have one more poll that we'd like to launch, which asks, how can the Chancellor's Office support colleges with their enrollment management efforts? So we'd like to just take a peek at that to get some feedback to share with our state representatives. Okay, let's go ahead and end the poll and then share those results. So it looks like the most common response was identifying existing resources to support enrollment management. So that's helpful for us in being able to kind of point colleges to existing tools and resources in our system that can help with that process. The second response, it looks like, was continue to offer the statewide college attendance survey. So that's also good for us to know in terms of how useful was the survey data and actionable were those results for your colleges. Provide more targeted technical assistance. And then I don't know. So it looks like kind of a mixed results, but overall the information from the survey has been helpful, and then kind of helping colleges point to existing resources in the system to support their strategic enrollment management.
Thank you, Michelle and Alyssa, for facilitating a share out of the data and the results today. I'm Allison Beer, and I'm the research manager at the Chancellor's Office. We also just want to thank everybody for participating in the webinar today and for participating either by sending out the survey results to your students or leveraging the statewide findings that will be shared in the upcoming report. As Michelle mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, this is our second year of conducting this survey statewide, and the information is really valuable to the Chancellor's Office to help us get some more real-time data around students' decisions for enrollment before all of our MIS data comes in, and also to help folks at the local level encourage all the use of the data at your colleges to help support students more directly. So I'm also going to turn it over to Eric, because I think he has some sage words to share about using your data locally.
Yeah, hi everybody. Maybe just before I get into the using your data locally, there are a couple of questions in the Q&A. So to Will, specifically helpful to get the results sooner so we can take timely action. We would love to do that sooner. One of the challenges is just getting the survey out, and we do rely on the colleges to help do distribution. since the only contact information the chancellor's office has access to actually comes from the application. And so for continuing students or students who've been at your colleges for a number of years, the contact information that we have may not be fresh. And so I know with this particular iteration, we got it out just not a lot late compared to last year, but maybe just a squidge. But then we also had to wait for colleges to distribute, and depending on local rules and how they were interacting with other surveys or other contact information, it could drag on. And so, yeah, we would love to get this out a little bit sooner, but it's going to require a little bit more sort of statewide coordination to make that happen, and support from IR professionals like you. So thank you. If that had a little PBS ring, that's exactly what we're going for. In terms of using this at your colleges, naturally, the chancellor's office, this is one of the best tools that we have to get information in as a timely manner, as Allison was saying, but it's not just for us. And we know that, for some of you colleges, especially if you're a small shop or one person shop, it may be hard to get a survey like this out. And so, as was mentioned a couple times throughout, we want to make sure that this is getting used by your colleges. So really getting it in front of your financial aid directors, particularly some of those comments, getting in front of counselors. If you've got somebody who is in charge of strategic enrollment management, making sure copies of this are in front of them. If it's not, VP of Student Services, VP of Instruction, making sure that there are some things that we can act on. And again, if we can make this a little bit more timely, potentially it's that outreach to students before they've even chosen not to enroll. So I think there are a lot of good things we can do. If you've got good relationships with your marketing departments, we would love to see you connect with marketing departments. I don't even know if he's in the audience today, but Oleg Bespalov, I'll pull him on top of the bus with us in terms of how to integrate IR with marketing and trying to do that good work in terms of student communication. And for our anonymous attendee friend who just popped in the question, is the Chancellor's Office developing student-facing resources to help demystify financial aid? I think we're always looking at better ways to advertise that information to students. I know this has been a conversation with our good friends at the California Student Aid Commission. So I don't have specifics that I can offer you today, but this is always a point of conversation here at the Chancellor's Office. If y'all want to have fun, I'm not necessarily I'm encouraging you absolutely to do this. Go look at your own websites. We know that's kind of the primary tool that we use to communicate to students. Go look at your websites and see what it tells students about how to apply for financial aid. Go look at your websites in terms of how priority registration works. Is the information accurate? Check up on that stuff. And I know that's not necessarily your job as IR professionals, but as you're contextualizing and bringing this student survey back to them, I think there's an opportunity to show where how we think we're presenting ourselves to students doesn't always match some reality. So just some thoughts. I don't know that those are sage thoughts. Maybe it's a little bit spicy. But we're happy to stick around if other folks have questions that they want to put into the chat. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and put up our contact information and make sure that you've got ways to get a hold of all of us.
Another question came up, Eric, for the CCCCO. But before you answer that, just wanted to also share that the federal government is also looking at ways of simplifying the FAFSA. And so there is the FAFSA Simplification Act. So that is another sort of source that you can take a look at or refer your financial aid office in the event that they aren't aware of that, in terms of efforts that are happening nationwide to help demystify and simplify the access to financial aid resources for our students.
And for our anonymous attendees question about user experience, we don't have a branch for user experience. We do have some work that we're doing with folks like the Tech Center for things like the application, trying to understand those experiences, but we don't have a resource that's going to be able to support all 116 colleges in looking at their websites and designing their websites. It's something we'll bring back though. That may be something that we can work with in terms of providing technical assistance to the field. So I can bring that back as a suggestion, but we don't have anything at the moment to help you out with that. So apologies, but it is worth a peruse next time you're curious. Try to investigate a program. Consider registering at your college, or if you've got a friend in the field, register at their college and have them register at your college. Take notes. We can have some action research about what that experience was like, what that was like. So thanks, everybody.